Today is Monday, January 20th, and this is Celtics Beat on the CLNS Media Network, the leading online provider of audio-video coverage of the Boston Celtics. I'm Adam Kaufman. Episode 350, featuring Heavy.com NBA writer Sean Deveney, is brought to you by BetOnline.ag. Go to BetOnline.ag, use the promo code CLNS50 for a 50% bonus on your next deposit. Okay, everybody, inhale, exhale, I guess, right? We have reached the midpoint of the Celtics season, 27-14, tied for fourth in the East, percentage points ahead of the Pacers, trailing the Heat and Raptors in second and third, and then, of course, the Bucks are running away in first place. That race is over. Stop even thinking about that if you were. I think we can now silence all of the early season chatter of, oh, the Celtics might be better in Milwaukee after that big win. I think we know where everybody stands at this point for the most part. Now, overall, as we welcome you into another edition of Celtics Beat, no complaints on the record itself, but anyone who has watched this team the last few weeks knows there's a lot to complain about. 3-game skid, losses in 6 of 8, and it's only going to get tougher, most notably tonight against the Lakers, but we'll get to that. Now, lately, losses to the Wizards, Spurs, Pistons, Suns, all mediocre at best. Blew a 15-point lead to the Sixers, fell behind the Bucks by 27, only to rally and lose by 5. Just a bunch of winnable games in the mix here, so I can understand why you're frustrated. I'm frustrated too. Bit banged up lately as well. Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, they've missed some time, and both, along with defensive-minded would-be captain Marcus Smart, said that Boston just needs to learn from its losses.
We just have to, be ready. All these losses that we, are going through are just lessons for us.
Teams are looking to beat us, man. We've been saying it all year. We didn't come out with the type of aggressiveness for the game that we needed, and we lost.
We got to come in every game with the mindset, and we just got to really fully understand that, we're a good team, but we're not a great team. We're not where we want to be, and we just can't turn that switch on at any given time. We tried it, and it obviously didn't work for us. So we have to come out the gates ready so we don't have to get ready.
May not feel like it lately, but generally sees our getting the job done against bad teams. 20-6 against sub-500 clubs, and as we know, of course, pretty bad lately. We've highlighted that. But Brad Stevens, this fresh off of Saturday's loss to the Suns, he was asked what needs to improve defensively, and this is one of my favorite Brad quotes, actually.
Just everything. Every single angle you take on a pick and roll, how much you get into the body, how much you chase, when do you switch, how high are you as a big, when do you step back, how you guard a down screen, do you trail it, do you go under it, do you meet him on the catch, what do you do? I mean, there's 50 things to do on a possession. Right now we're doing about 46 on our best ones, and we need to do 50.
I love that quote just because it's a reminder of how basketball smart these guys are, and I'm not, and most of us are not. We all have opinions, we all have hot takes, and we don't necessarily know all of the inside of what is going on, especially in a given play, let alone over the course of an entire game and long stretches of season, and we're not behind closed doors, and that just further complicates things. I bet those film sessions with Brad are fascinating. But beyond that, speaking of not pretty, Gordon Hayward's missed layup against the Suns with 36 seconds left. Boston down by 5, a chance to cut that deficit to 3, really have a chance to, I hate to even put it this way against a bad team, but steal that victory. Again, a 4-point loss without Kemba, without Jaylen, so some built-in excuses there if you want to go down that path. We don't have to. But after the loss, this is just a little stretch, a little Q&A with reporters. After the defeat, Hayward was pelted with questions about the miss.
Obviously, that last miss was a tough miss. Mm-hmm. Are you still feeling a little hesitancy with your foot?
No. I just missed it. I just missed it.
Were you caught, in between, trying to figure out if you were going to dunk or lay it in? Or?
Yeah. I should have just went up and dunked it. That was the mistake, was not dunking it, but certainly was caught kind of halfway thinking about it, should have just went up and dunked it.
What was Marcus Smart saying to you in the moment? What were you feeling at that time there?
Well, he's just like, move on, it's all good, stay with us, but in the moment it's hard to let that one go. That we needed that bucket for sure, so we still had a chance there, but certainly needed that one.
Is that still part of the mental part of coming back?
It has nothing to do with that. I missed the layup. So that's it. So that's it.
I played that whole long stretch for this reason. Let's bring in good friend of the show, Heavy.com NBA writer Sean Deveney. Sean, when will people stop asking Gordon Hayward if he's healthy? Hasn't he shown us enough at this point that the leg is fine, his confidence is fine? Sometimes a crappy miss is just a crappy miss.
Yeah, and certainly he's been back long enough. I mean, if you remember the beginning of the season when it looked like this guy might have a chance to make an All-Star game after the first 10 games or so. Certainly, this is a player who was 100% back, and I'm not sure what he needs to do to stop having that come up. I guess when something so strange happens like that, when a guy with his experience level misses a wide open shot like that, you're just grasping for any reason why something like that could happen, and that sort of fuels the speculation. But yeah, this guy's 100%.
On the whole, because you bring up that early season sample size for Hayward, and I know there have been some nagging injuries since, a little bit of missed time. On the whole, he's had a good half season. He's missed 9 games out of the 41. He's averaging 16 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, just rough numbers. Shooting career highs from the field and free throw line, by the way, at 51% and 88% respectively. But if you log on to Twitter, you spend time on Twitter just like I do, fans want him traded yesterday. Explain this to me.
He doesn't fit. And that's the thing. It's when they signed him, they expected him to carry over what he'd done in Utah. Where he was a 20-point per game scorer who could shoot 38, 39% from the 3-point line, get 6 rebounds and 5 assists. They were signing what they thought was that kind of player. He comes in, he gets hurt. You see Jaylen Brown and Tatum develop as quickly as they have, and now what do you do with Hayward? And I think that's what fuels this is he just doesn't fit. The future is Tatum and Brown. It's not Hayward, and so if you can get something for him, I think that's the logic. Is if it's not necessarily that he's played poorly, it's just that he's not the future, and if you want to develop the future, and this is a guy who's an asset, then get something for him now that can pay off as you develop this team around Brown and Tatum. So that's the logic. It's a lot easier said than done, however.
Yeah, let's go down this path a bit, because there's a lot there that you just said. In particular, when he arrived from Utah, when they signed him, and I realized fans wanted him to be statistically what he was that last year in Utah when he was an All-Star. I personally, I don't know about you, I never expected him to be that guy. Now, I didn't expect him to get hurt. I expected some of the raw stats like shooting percentage, things like that, to carry over from what they were. But we're talking about a totally different team now, but with Kyrie Irving, with Al Horford, with just the way he was going to fit into that mix, I never thought he was going to average 20 points here. I looked at him as, 17, 18. He's a good two-way player, arguably, again, when fully healthy and confident, the best two-way player on that entire team, just overall, not as good an overall player as Kyrie Irving, but the best two-way player on that team. And he was going to be asked to do a lot of the same things that he did in Utah, but statistically, he wasn't going to be asked to be that same guy. I think, again, to your point, fans thought he was going to be that guy or wanted him to be that guy, but that part didn't catch me off guard. So I guess I'm not in agreement with you in saying he's certainly not the future. I agree with that. But to say that he doesn't fit or can't have a fit on this team and be a truly impactful guy, as we've seen at stretches over the course of this year, I don't know that I'm on board with you there.
I think he needs the ball in his hands, and once you bring in Kemba, after having Kyrie, you're not going to have the ball in his hands quite as much. So I think that there's that, and then positionally, it's not ideal to have those three on the floor. I think they've done a pretty good job. Certainly they're all long, they're all good defensively. They can switch. But you'd probably like a more pure shooting guard, or you might be better off, say, with Marcus Smart in the starting lineup. A guy who maybe doesn't need as many shots, who can be a bit of a combo guard. That's the thing, Adam. It's not so much that it doesn't drag him down as a player. It's not a knock on him as a player. It's just he's a little repetitive with some of the other things that they have.
Sure.
I think I liked him better off the bench. I thought, especially with the bench they have now, that would be a good way to use him. I think there's reluctance naturally to have a $30 million player as your sixth man, and I understand that. But just the way things have developed, again, it's a good problem to have, because it means that Tatum and Brown have come along and come farther than you probably thought that they would. But just the fit, to me, hasn't quite been right. It's not quite what you want with the way the rest of the team has developed. And the other thing too that stands out, and the one thing that's different about his game than it was in Utah, is he doesn't attack the basket with this team, and that's understandable because they have so many other guys who handle the ball and do that. You can see it in the free throw numbers. He averaged about 6 free throws a game when he was in Utah. This year he's averaging 1.9. So that's he's not going to the basket the way he used to.
Obviously, when you start to think about and explore the trade deadline, which is coming up February 6th, it's a few days after the Super Bowls. He's president of basketball operations, Danny Ainge. He was asked about that trade chatter and what's going on a couple days ago on 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston. Didn't say a whole lot.
Not as active as there have been in other trade markets. It's still a little bit early, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of activity. There's a little. There are some discussions going on, but not as much as some years.
So there have been rumors or speculation, or maybe it's just fan chatter, media chatter, what ifs on social media and then Reddit and forums and wherever else about, what can you get? What can you bring in? And we know the C's need more from the bench, be it a scorer or a big, and we can dive into that. But when you think about what they could acquire, what potentially is out there, when people are talking about the Kevin Loves and the Andre Drummonds of the world, which, by the way, I don't think that's remotely realistic, but the only way to get a guy like that, a guy of that caliber, is obviously you got to have the money to swap, and that's where a Gordon Hayward comes into play. Most guys, you're not going to get those marquee guys or guys that are paid like marquee guys by just stealing someone with Marcus Smart's contract, which, by the way, I'm adamantly against. Marcus Smart's not going anywhere. But you're talking about lower tier guys that are on that roster, and all of a sudden you're cobbling together so many different players to try and make the money work. So it becomes a Hayward. So let's start big before we go small. If in fact Danny Ainge is considering trading Gordon Hayward, who's he looking at?
He's not. I mean, that's the thing. I think Gallinari from Oklahoma City would probably be the best in terms of fit. If you were going to move, Hayward, to get more of a pure 3-point shooter, a guy at his size who can score the way he does, that's probably what they would be looking at. Drummond, that's not happening, obviously. To me, you're not trading Hayward no matter what, because it sets a bad precedent. He was such a big free agent signing. There's no indication that he wants to be traded right now. I think there's a chance, and this is the only way that you'd see it is if he agreed to opt in to next year's deal at I think it's $34 million. If he agreed to opt in, then they could look for a trade for him this summer. They could look for a potential partner, and work with him. Because he was such a big signing for him. Obviously, he's close to Brad. I think they'd want to sort of do right by him, and I don't think that trading him in the next couple of weeks is doing right by him. So I think that's a possibility, but I don't think that anything's going to happen with him in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, people do need to remember, for anyone who's forgotten, there is that relationship with Brad. He chose Brad. He chose the Celtics over the comforts of Utah, over going to Miami. Those were the three suitors there at the end that he took the meetings with, and this was what he decided. And I do think for a variety of reasons. And this was a real question, I thought, early in the season. But now, after the injuries and the way he's performing and what the stats are, I think, the odds certainly, unlike Al Horford last year, favor Gordon Hayward opting in for next year, be it here or, doing what you're doing or talking about and working something out with him where he goes elsewhere and opts in there. But we got a bunch of questions on Twitter, and we'll work some of them in as we go. But this one specifically on Gordon Hayward from Jordan. What will the breaking point be with Gordon? Because it seems as if Danny and Brad are 1,000,000% ride or die with this guy.
I think it will be them sitting down with him in the off season and him saying, I think I'd be better off somewhere else. I think it would have to come from him, or through a conversation in which he agreed to that, in which he said, hey, look, we could probably get something done with, say Portland. Which would be a great fit for him if the Celtics could get back, C.J. McCollum, something like that, where he was part of the process. But they're not. You're right. They are ride or die with him, and part of it, like I say, is they spent so long. I think a lot of people forget, Adam, how long we spent talking about why can't the Celtics get major free agents. Mm-hmm. They get Al Horford, they get Gordon Hayward. Horford leaves. I don't think they want to turn around and trade Hayward and find themselves back in that situation, especially where players and some of the other agents are saying, geez, I don't know. Al Horford left pretty quickly and they dumped Gordon Hayward. I don't think they want to put themselves back in that situation. I think they want to, if anything's going to happen with Hayward, it's going to come with his approval.
Well, and while it was totally understandable and explainable and justified, if they care about this sort of thing, or more importantly, if players around the league care about this sort of thing, and agents as well, they did take a bit of a PR hit when they traded Isaiah Thomas.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's and I think among players that there was a PR hit. I think agents understood that they had to do that, and that that they gave Thomas a chance that no other team really gave him in terms of his ability to show what he could do. I think among some players that does linger, and they don't want to double down on that. They don't want to let that be something that they become known for. You sign with the Celtics and who knows what they might do to you. That's something that you have to be conscious of. Obviously you weigh it against what's good for the team, but I don't think that pulling the trigger on a move for Gordon Hayward when you're getting back a few months of Andre Drummond, I don't think that's something that counts as worth it.
Well, as we said, C's need more from the bench. Brad Stevens has acknowledged as much as well.
We're going to ride our best five, as we've talked about quite a bit, and then we just need everybody else to play a role around them. But we need those five to be awfully good.
We all know that best five includes Hayward, Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Marcus Smart. And then you're just kind of sprinkling around them. So let's go with that. Let's get to some more of these Twitter questions because they need a scorer, they need a defensive big. Those are the focuses. Whether realistic or not, I don't know. You can help tell me. This is from the Celtics blog account. Does the team's recent struggles increase the urgency for Ainge to make a move?
Yeah, I think there was always some urgency to do something with the bench to get a score. I really think that they had hoped that Langford would be healthy and would have developed into a guy who could give you 10 points a night off the bench. That obviously hasn't happened. I think losing Robert Williams has been tough as well. When you talk about a defensive-minded big man, well, that's the one. And his hip injury seems to be a little strange. We'll see if he's able to come back sometime next month. I think that's what they're counting on with him. And other than that, when you're looking at what you might be able to get for the bench in terms of scorers, I think you got to think small. I don't think you're even Bertans from Washington that everybody talks about. I don't see the Wizards trading him. I think you really have to think smaller in terms of potential players who could fill some of those roles.
Let's go with that, because from James, he wants to know, how about your potential trade targets to help with the bench scoring and which are the best fits? And before you answer, I'm going to throw out, I was texting with a buddy of mine who I sometimes mention on this show. He, diehard Celtics fan, but also he's a huge NBA fan, likes to really dive into all the advanced stats and all the salary cap situations and, analyzing rosters. He's texting me like a madman when I'm trying to sleep last night. With all of these different, I've looked at all 30 rosters, and these are the guys in his mind that you could potentially acquire that would come in and help this team for a relatively low price. There's Gerald Green, there's Isaiah Thomas, there's J.J. Barea, Alec Burks, Dwayne Bacon, Alonzo Trier, and then if you wanted to pay just a bit more, a Langston Galloway, or even a little bit more than a bit more, Bogdan Bogdanovic. After that, there aren't really any options in his mind, and he also says, in his opinion, and hell, in Danny or Brad's opinions, how many of those guys, if any, would you actually take over what Brad Wanamaker gives you on both sides of the ball? So now that you've heard all that, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, if they could get Bogdanovic or even Bjelica from the Kings, I would even consider giving up the Memphis pick, especially with as well as Memphis has played, for one of those guys, because they'll be restricted free agents. You'd have to pay them and decide whether you want to do that. But you could probably get them on a reasonable contract if they're in a winning situation. Either one of those guys, I would salivate at. However, the Kings aren't moving either one of those guys. You saw the moves that the Kings made this weekend. They're still trying to make the playoffs. They're still looking at that. So maybe that changes in the next 2 weeks here. If some reality settles over, if they can't turn things around there. But yeah, those guys would be high on my wish list. Alec Burks, I think, is a good name. He makes about $2 million. He's been a scorer in the league. That's pretty much what he does. He's averaging, I think, 15 points for the Warriors, but that's mostly because
who else is going to score for them?
Warriors, yeah, right. But he can do that. He can come off the bench and be a guy, not a great 3-point shooter, but finds ways to get points. He is someone I would definitely be interested in. Glenn Robinson too with the Warriors. I wonder if they're possibly going to consider moving him. He had a terrible year in Detroit last year, but he's been pretty good for them this year. Good 3-and-D guy. He's a bit like Semi, except a much better offensive player. But can play some pretty good defense as well. I wonder if Golden State would consider moving him. Another guy who I think. I like Bryn Forbes from the Spurs. Terrible defensive player, so you gotta accept that. But he's a guy who is not having a great year, so you can probably pluck him from them. But traditionally, he's been about a 40% 3-point shooter in his career. Average about 10, 11 points. That's the kind of guy who I think that I'd like to see them pulling off their bench. Guy who's been in a variety of situations and it could probably thrive. So yeah, none of these guys are going to knock your socks off, that's for sure. But I think that's kind of the level of guy that you're looking for who can come in and give you 10 points off that bench. That's really just what they need.
One quick break from Sean. Tell you the big game is only 2 weeks away. You can follow all the action at betonline.ag. Chiefs, Niners, they are Super Bowl bound, and the Chiefs are favored by 1.5 in Miami. 130, minus 130 on the money line. Tons of points expected, too. There's an over-under of 53.5. Everyone knows there's more than just the spread and the over-under, though, or the money line, obviously. It's Super Bowl prop bet season. You can look at MVP odds. Patrick Mahomes, he's the favorite at plus 110, I believe it is. How about Raheem Mostert, plus 800? Or get away from football. How long will Demi Lovato sing the anthem for? What color will the Gatorade bath be? How many commercials will have a dog in it? Which auto brand commercial will air first? All of this stuff is in play. You can wager on all of it. There are a zillion more. Before next kickoff in a couple weeks, head over to betonline.ag. Use our promo code CLNS50 to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bring the playoffs home with our exclusive sportsbook partner, betonline.ag. You kind of answered this before, but just to further underscore anything you would want to add from Celtics 446000800. It could fit a few more numbers in there. If the Celtics do make a move, is a big or a bench scorer more important? So never mind what's more realistic. Which is more necessary?
Well, I mean, what are you going to do with another big? I mean, you've got Cantor and Tice. If you get Williams back, you've got
feels like a big if right now.
Yeah, it is. It is, but you got to keep them on the roster. So I mean,
right.
You're going to have 6 centers on the roster. I just don't know that you can do that. I think you need to get the bench scorer. Another guy who could kind of be a little bit of both is not Marcus Morris, but his twin brother Markieff, who'll be available. He makes about $3 million, so pretty easy to get him. Not as good as Marcus, but has that same edge that you liked about Marcus. If Marcus is making $19 million and Markieff is making $3 million, Markieff's a pretty good bargain. He's not $16 million worse than Marcus, that's for sure. So he'd be somebody who I think can give you a bench scorer and also play that sort of power forward combo position like Marcus did last year.
PGaming_K asks, will the Celtics make a trade, or do you think they'll wait till the buyout to help out the roster?
I think that if they're going to do something, they've got to make a trade, because you look at the roster and there's not a whole lot of room for you'd have to cut. You'd have to get rid of somebody, and I'm not sure that there's anybody they really want to get rid of.
Right.
So I think it would have to come on the trade market if they wind up doing something. They've got these rookies, and they don't want to they don't want to just give up on any of them. I think they really like and want to see what some of these guys can do rather than signing a 34-year-old who might pitch in a little bit down the stretch. I think they'd rather keep and develop their rookies. So if something's going to happen, it's going to be a trade. It's going to be Semi Ojeleye or somebody like that who goes out. That would be my guess.
This one from wild_goose40. Do you think a lineup change should happen before deciding on whether to make a move? And if so, what change? And I'll just add to that, you brought up before the idea of starting smart and putting Hayward on the bench when everybody's healthy. Is that worth a crack?
I still think that's their best. That's their best way to go. That I love it when the ball is in Gordon's hands and he can kind of run the show a little bit. At least for 10, 12 minutes a night. I thought he was good with that last year. I think he's more comfortable with that. I think when I say he has struggled with his fit, I think that's part of it. Is that he has a hard time being the third or fourth fiddle, and sometimes that's what he's got to do. I think giving him a role off the bench where he's clearly running the show, I think that's probably their best the best way to arrange things. Again, they've been reluctant to do that. I understand why, but I think that in terms of winning, in terms of trying to break out of these doldrums that they've been in the last couple of weeks, I think that might be a good way to do it.
Someone had asked me before too, and I don't have the question in front of me, but to the effect of, what do you think has contributed to these doldrums, as you mentioned? Is it just playing down to competition? Is it taking teams for granted? Is it the lack of a bench and having trouble making up for that? It would be easy to say all the above, but what do you think is the biggest issue?
Yeah, I mean, January. This happens every year, and it happens to a lot of teams. Look around in the standings, and you see a lot of teams sort of shuffling lately, and that's common. You get the injuries, and they're thin. So the injuries, that exposes the bench a little bit. I think that's something that you mentioned on Twitter the other day, and that's absolutely right. That if you're not a deep team to begin with, you get a couple injuries, especially at this time of year where guys are, it's not the beginning of the season yet. You're not at the All-Star break yet. these are the doldrums. And so I think that's what's happening with them. But I think probably playing down to the competition. And really, that Detroit game was the perfect example. They let Detroit dictate the pace of that game. They let them play free and easy. They did the same thing against Phoenix. The Celtics want to play slow. Both of those games were played at a pretty high pace. And I think that's, if you take all the factors, the injuries, the time of year, the thin bench, you add them all up, it winds up showing itself to me in style of play. If they're playing slow and they're playing pick and roll and they're doing things the way the Celtics have been doing when they win, then that's an indication that they're dictating the pace. When they're letting teams dictate the pace to them, that's an indication that the Celtics aren't putting in that same level of effort.
I'm springing this on you like I am any other question, but this is not a basic question. This is more of a rankings question. I feel like it would have been a nice thing to let you actually think about it as opposed to having to answer it on the spot. But nevertheless, that's your mild out, I guess, if you have any trouble or anything like that. But give me, knowing full well that nobody is fully untouchable, especially when Danny Ainge is, the one pulling the strings. Give me your 3 or 5 most untouchable Celtics players or assets.
Well, obviously Jalen, you can't trade him basically because of the extension. So he'd have to be number one. Just, NBA rules dictate that. I would think Tatum would probably be number 2 on that list. Just because of his salary, he makes less than $8 million. So when you're talking about matching up salaries, you're not really going to be able to get a player of his talent level. So he'd have to be number 2. I would say, for me, it would probably even be Marcus Smart.
Me too.
I'd have him ahead, especially at $12 million. With reasonable contract for the next couple of years for what he gives you. Especially the way he fits in with Tatum and Brown. I think you'd have to have him number 3, and then probably Kemba 4 and Gordon Hayward 5. I would have to rank them that way.
And Hayward's a guy you'd like to trade, so it just goes to show that everybody who falls under him is, completely available.
Yeah, look, they don't want to trade, Langford. I think they want to Grant Williams. They don't want to give up on any of those guys.
Sure.
But if they got somebody, or if they were able to get a player and a potential lottery pick or something, then
right. See you later.
That's something they'd have to consider. Right, exactly.
You bring up Smart, and we won't talk too much about him because, how could you justify? We could spend hours talking about Marcus Smart. That wouldn't be enough. I preach it all the time. The man should be captain of this team. And Gordon Hayward brought up earlier what he did after that miss. Of course it was Marcus Smart that ran over to him. Why wouldn't it be Marcus Smart? But it has not been all bad lately for this team. And, of course, Smart, Saturday against the Suns, it was historic. Give a listen from NBC Sports Boston.
Smart for 3. Got it! Marcus Smart! The new all-time record for most threes in the game by a Celtic, Marcus Smart. Here comes Smart. Pulls up for 3. Yeah! If I'm going to own the record, I might as well put a little distance between myself and everybody else.
I'll trade all that in for a win, especially with the way this team has been playing. I'd rather have the win than the record. Obviously it's a great accomplishment. It just shows, my hard work that I've been putting in is paying off. But like I said, I'd rather trade that in for the win.
I said this on Twitter after the game. I think a lot of guys say, I would trade whatever the individual milestone for my team's regular season victory. We're not talking championships, just one regular season victory. Yeah. And I think they're full of crap. When Marcus Smart says it, I actually believe it. I think he's just so team first, I do believe it. For anyone that missed it, we now live in a universe where Marcus Smart has hit more three-pointers in a single game than any other player in Celtics history. It is not fair for the people that have said, but what, putting him in the same sentence as Larry Bird and that era. It doesn't count. It counts statistically, but it doesn't count because they didn't play the game that way. Larry Bird took a few threes a game? I mean, it was a totally different style of basketball, and even 10 years after Bird played, it was a different style of basketball to where we are at this point in 2020. So Smart, 37 points. He made 11 three-pointers on 22 attempts, and for people that want to balk at the attempts because he had as many three-point attempts as Jason Tatum had points in that game, or Hayward, actually. I think Tatum had 26 and Hayward had 22. But anyway, 11 out of 22. It's still 50%. Nobody's going to complain about that. He's at almost 36% of the year, which trails only Jalen, Kemba, and Jason at this point on the C's. What did you think of that performance, the barrage, just the style of play? I mean, it was James Harden-esque, what we watched from Marcus Smart in that game.
Yeah, I think if you're Brad, then it already makes you a little bit nervous that Marcus is going to start thinking, you know what, maybe I'll take 23 pointers against the Lakers tonight.
Right.
So because sometimes he, when he gets the hot hand, he needs a little bit of a heat check.
Well, you had the heat check that bound off the board so badly it was like right out of Philip Seymour Hoffman. Along came Polly. Raindrops. It was awful.
Yeah, but I mean, look, this guy, I thought that I was watching that game and I thought back to 2014 when he was in Chicago for the pre-draft camp. I remember talking to him, and at that time, he talked about his upbringing in Dallas and growing up in the projects and some of the things that he did, some of the things that he saw, some of the violence. And at the time, if you remember when he got drafted, there was the whole thing about whether his temper was too hot, and he'd gone after a fan or got into a fan in the stands at Oklahoma State. So there's all this stuff around him. And to see where he is now, the way he has taken all that negative energy and channeled it into what he's become, where, he'll get into it with other players but he always knows where the line is now. He doesn't, whatever the knock was, whatever the fear was about him in 2014 has not come to fruition. He's found a way to channel all that energy into really good things. I think that's great to see.
He hasn't made another rap video though since he signed that new contract.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Actually.
Yeah, we need another 52 million song or whatever it was called. 50 million, 52 million, I don't remember exactly, but it was relatively catchy. Instead you got, Antonio Brown coming up with rap songs while he's trying to find his way back into the league. All right, so here I'm going to do something, Sean, here that I've never done on this show.
Oh boy.
If you are tired of Kyrie Irving talk, as I know so many of you are, and we did a lot of it with Mike Gorman last week, if you are tired of Kyrie Irving talk, turn it off. Stop the show. End it. We're not going to do any more Celtics or trade talk or anything like that. We are now, just for a few minutes, not a lot, for a few minutes, we're going to do a little Kyrie. We're going to hear from Kyrie because some of the stuff that he has said in the last few days, they have to be acknowledged. And if you don't want to hear it, you don't want to deal with it, turn the show off. I won't be mad at you. Tune in next show. That'd be great. Mm-hmm. Thanks to Sean. We're all done with him. Great. I mean, I'm not done with him, but you can be done with him. It's cool. Turn off the show. It's fine. If you're still with us, thank you. And, thank you, Kyrie Irving, for being you, really. So, if anyone missed this, Irving is, I don't know what it is now, but at the time of this 5 days ago, 3 games back from sitting out 2 months, milking, in my opinion, a shoulder injury, but let's just say nursing, dealing with a shoulder injury for 2 months, 3 games back, a loss to the Sixers, his worst game of that 3-game stretch. He had actually played pretty well the first 2, but his worst game of the 3-game stretch, maybe his worst game of the year, shoots 6 out of 21, a game worst minus 29 rating in an 11-point loss, where the next worst was minus 10. Every other player on his team significantly better than he was in that game. And what did he do immediately after that game? He went on a typical Kyrie diatribe about, we heard it from him in Boston. I think it was last year, early on in the year, when he was talking about the need for a 13 or 15-year veteran, and people started wondering, hey, they should re-sign Kendrick Perkins. I think it was last year, maybe it was the year before. It doesn't matter. He's done this before. He did it in Cleveland. He did it in Boston. And then after this Brooklyn loss, when he was the worst player on the floor, we need better players around me.
It's transparent. It's just out there. It's glaring in terms of the pieces that we need in order for us to be at that next level. And I'm going to continue to reiterate it. We're going to do the best with the guys that we have within our locker room now. And, we worry about all the other stuff in terms of moving pieces and everything else as an organization down the line in the summer. And, it's just something that we signed up for. We knew what we were coming into in the beginning of the season. Guys are going down left and right for us. GT's out. DJ, got hurt tonight. Wilson's just coming back. We have complimentary, young guys as well that have done a great job for the last 3 years. So collectively, I feel like we have great pieces, but obviously it's pretty glaring that we need, one more piece or two more pieces that will complement myself, KD, DJ, GT, Spence, Karras, and, we'll see how that evolves.
You might think Kevin Durant would be the piece next year, but no, we need a piece around me and KD, a piece or two, in order to be good enough. And how about if you're a guy on that roster who's been busting his ass for the last couple months when Irving was out, who he didn't mention, by the way, that we need some more guys around me. And while Irving was out, the team went 500. It has been noticeably a better team without Irving than with Irving on the floor this season. Well under 500 when Kyrie has been available. And so he says all that. He's then asked, what's your plan for the rest of the season? I won't play you that sound, but he basically said, we're just going to do our best. We're going to kind of ride it out, try and stay healthy. Not focused on winning the championship or even getting to the playoffs. It's like, let's just, ride it out. We'll see what happens. So, of course, the next day, reporters did what they had to do and what they should have done, went right back to him and asked him about the criticism that he receives. And this self-righteous SOB had, just listen.
Probably a telltale sign of the career that I've had, some of the moves that I made individually and then as well as coming to different environments and organizations. At the end of the day, I always say it's an entertainment league. We're very drama-filled. Everything regurgitates on all these media platforms, which is part of our society. I can't really do anything about it, except really be, a pillar in our locker room, be very communicative. And when I'm out there with the guys, just impact winning. That's really what it comes down to. It's not like I'm a asshole yelling at everybody in the friggin' locker room all the time and you hear all these stories, At the end of the day, my name, it was given to me by my grandfather. I'm very grateful, but it's in a lot of people's mouths all the time, and it is what it is. I've earned that respect in terms of how great I am as a player, and there's still more goals I want to accomplish in this league, and I can't do it without improving an organization and winning a championship, and that's what it comes down to. So I'm going to continue to push. I'm going to continue to demand greatness out of myself and demand greatness out of my teammates, and we go from there. If it's harsh as a leader or it's too much for anybody, you're not in our locker room, stay the fuck out. It's as simple as that.
The latest example, Sean, of Kyrie saying to the media, screw you, I don't know why you're asking me about my team and what goes on behind the doors, the day after he calls out the team and what happens behind closed doors.
Yeah, at this point, Kyrie's, 27 years old. He's been in the league for 8 years.
Older. 28, 29?
Is he 28, 29?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. He's... He should know by now. This is not the first time. I think that people with the Nets cringe every time there's a crowd of media around them, just like the Celtics did. It's funny, and I'll tell you a little story, Adam. Is back at the start of the year, the Nets were seriously considering signing Carmelo Anthony. And ultimately they decided they didn't want to do it because they thought there would be a sideshow, and that having Carmelo Anthony in there, would detract from the development of the rest of the team. And so they wound up not signing him. And I remember talking to somebody in Carmelo's camp, and he said, they've got that so wrong, because, Carmelo, when he deals with the media, he tends to say the right things. He's going to get a lot of attention for the things he says, but he doesn't say, cuckoo out of left field things. And the more attention they can take off of Kyrie Irving, the more reporters that go and stand in front of Carmelo rather than Kyrie, the better it is for the Nets. That's what he said at the time. And I think that's played out. I think you've really seen, Carmelo's been fine in Portland, and the Nets are sitting here dealing with this kind of stuff. So it's interesting that that's the way it's played out. That when you think about it, too, the other thing to think about is, remember how Kevin Durant has been with the media the last couple of years, especially last year. He was just, I mean, I've never seen a guy take a nosedive with the way he treated people quite like Durant last year. I don't know what they're going to, that team is going to be something next year, and it's not going to be pretty, certainly for the media, and I don't know that they'll be good enough to justify the way that they're going to treat people in New York, and that's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, we've been saying it for, well, one, when they had those signings, I was among, I'm not going to say first, plenty of people probably felt this way, but I was certainly on the, of the mind, this is not going to work. I mean, they may be good, they may reach a conference finals, but this team is not going to reach a finals. It's not going to win a championship. It just won't. You're way too combative, way too thin-skinned, and now in the New York market, like God forbid they played for the Knicks, and it was magnified that much more because obviously that's a marquee franchise versus playing for the Nets. And I think part of the reason, I know that Durant has taken some heat on Twitter for this as well, now that he's getting in the habit of responding to more of his critics on Twitter, be it in the media or Kendrick Perkins or whoever else. They know it. I mean, they were afraid. Maybe afraid is too strong a word, but, picking the lesser of two evils, we're going to play for the Nets as opposed to playing for the Knicks because the criticism is going to be that much harsher if we're with New York, at Madison Square Garden, at the Mecca, as opposed to with the Brooklyn Nets. And I think this thing, when everybody's healthy, it's going to come home to roost. I mean, this is a lost year for Irving. I mean, don't be surprised if he ends up missing another 20, 30 games over the course of this year and just kind of mails it in until everybody's healthy next year. That would not surprise me in the least.
Yeah, and it does feel like it's going to be a team that never lives up to the hype or the potential. And I mean, Kyrie has struggled to stay healthy in the last, 5 years, going back to when he had the knee injury in the finals there. And and even before that, at the beginning of his career, he was hurt quite a bit. Of course, he missed most of his career at Duke. So I mean, he's probably never going to play more than 65 games or so. And what's Durant going to be coming back at 31, 32 years old after Achilles surgery? It's going to take him at least a year to get back to 100%, and by then he's going to be 33 years old. So I really think that this is going to be a tremendous black hole in the next couple of years, but it'll sure be entertaining to watch from afar.
You think there's any buyer's remorse already on the part of the Nets, or do you think this is, almost kind of the way people have talked about Danny Ainge trading for Kyrie Irving? It was just something you didn't know how it was going to work out, obviously, and there were all sorts of red flags, but you felt like you had to give it a shot and hope for the best. Obviously, Irving was the guy they had to bring in order to get Kevin Durant, but big picture, is this something they're still feeling, I don't know about good about, but still feeling is worthwhile?
Yeah, I would doubt it. I do think that they had tried so hard to get themselves in that position to have good young players who were on reasonable contracts that they could attack free agency in the way that they wanted to, and they got the two best guys they could, and you can't blame them for that. But at the same time, you're going to have to live with it now. And the red flags were all over the place. And so, maybe we'll be wrong, and maybe these guys will come out and be terrific next year. I'd be shocked if that happened. But yeah, I think certainly the way the day-to-day has gone, there's a lot of buyer's remorse there, and there's a lot of questions about, man, what could we have done differently?
Let's end this thing on a happier note. Reward the people who stuck around through the Kyrie talk, because the All-Star game is next month, and I probably won't chat with you on the show again before the All-Star game rolls around. And I'm remembering. I wish I could pull it up, but that's the beauty of having you. You can recount it. You had tweeted out right around the All-Star game, I think it was last year, a great story about a player. Was it Gilbert Arenas? It was a Washington player checking into the hotel. And every
every one of my good stories is a Gilbert Arenas story.
Yeah, well, tell me as many as you want because I loved it.
Yeah, some of them I can't say on the air, but yeah, no, he checked into the All-Star Hotel, and what happens is everybody checks in under a false name. They all have different names. Shaq's fake name used to be Idgaf Benjamin, and Idgaf was IDGAF. I don't give I'll let you figure out what the F stands for. So everybody checks in under false names, and so Gilbert in his first All-Star game goes up and he's checking in, and the lady says, well, what name would you like to use? And Gilbert Arenas says, what are you talking about? And she says, well, don't you want to use an alias? He says, no. You put down Gilbert Arenas, and anybody who comes in here, if they're a female, and they say they want to go up to Gilbert Arenas' room, you tell them my room number and send them on up. And the poor PR guy was there with him. It was just like sweat bullets. So
it's unbelievable.
That was Gilbert Arenas' first. It's too bad that we don't have a Gilbert Arenas in the league anymore. That's for sure.
Oh God, I remember when you tweeted that, and I laughed so hard. I was like, I can't wait to have him on the show at some point to ask about Gilbert Arenas. Any other good Gilbert Arenas stories that you can tell on the air? Along with probably won't live up to that.
I interviewed him when he was a rookie. I went out to California and talked with him, and I went to his condo and everything. And he rolled up in this truck. And it was just, it was absolutely, it had to be a $250,000 truck. I mean, it was just the way it was, it had like a dance floor in the back.
Souped up as souped up goes.
I was like, he's a second round pick, so I knew he was making about $300,000 at the time. I said, Gilbert, this is quite an expense, for you as a second round pick. He says, I didn't pay for that. The boosters at Arizona paid for that. I was like, Gilbert, you can't tell me that, man. Come on, I'm a reporter. You can't. And they said, yeah, don't write that. He was something, that's for sure.
Oh, my God. You are something. Sean Deveney, Heavy.com NBA writer, always a joy. This has been, I enjoy all these shows, but genuinely, this is one of my favorite in a little while here with everything that we had a chance to cover. It's going to be a really interesting time over the next couple of weeks, see what this team does with the trade deadline or doesn't do, has been the case in recent years. And I know we didn't talk about Celtics-Lakers later on tonight, in part because, honestly, whether they win or whether it's more of the same and they lose, no one game is going to solve any individual problem anyway. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens and who's available, who's healthy, who's not. But it's going to be an interesting time coming up. Sean, thank you so much.
Adam, thanks for having me.
Hope you stuck around after the Kyrie talk, if nothing else, just to get the Gilbert Arenas stories, because that's always a treat. All right, we've gone on long enough. Today's show brought to you by betonline.ag. Go to betonline.ag, use the promo code CLNS50 for a 50% bonus on your next deposit. Thanks again to Sean. That was great. That was a lot of fun. Producer Evan Valenti, Nick, Larry, John, everybody at CLNS Media. Most of all, of course, you. We welcome your feedback. You can get me on Twitter at Adam M. Kaufman. I apologize if I've been tweeting too much about Kyrie lately, but honestly, there's still an interest level there, even if it's just for me and the few others that retweet and like and whatever else. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm sorry. Unfollow if you want. Hope you don't. We'll keep talking Celtics and stuff too, but if you want to, go ahead, because it's all part of the story. Subscribe to Celtics Beat. Search Celtics or Celtics Beat on iTunes. It'll pop right up, or subscribe to the CLNS Media YouTube page as well. All kinds of great content there. All right, Gino, love to see you at the Garden tonight. Don't expect it, but hopefully soon.